to look at integrity assessment and what integrity management basically starts off with identification of the problem. And most of the talks in this session are primarily geared towards that, on how do we assess and make an assessment on what the threat to integrity is. Of course, as part of integrity management, of course, the good thing is integrity or asset integrity is fortunately is not always in the headlines unless there is a catastrophic incident that happens. So it may be fortunate because we don't have catastrophic incidents that we don't always be in the limelight, but at the same time it's core to any business operations, whether it is energy or any industry that operates. Managing the integrity of the assets is key, and it's all our one of the key roles for all of us in maintaining the integrity of whatever asset we have. That said, do we always succeed in happening that in meeting those requirements? Some of the usually we do. Most of the cases we do maintain our assets, and that is the reason why we don't see a lot of such incidents happening. But when the incidents do happen, they're really catastrophic. They have a very significant impact, not only on the financial aspects of the business, but has a significant can cause a huge impact to the safety and security of the people and the environment. These are some of the incidents which many of us have come across, seen over the last many years, and we know the details. So I'll not go into describing these incidents, but it just reiterates why managing the integrity of our assets is important. Why is it key that we ensure that we don't miss anything during our integrity management, or how we manage assets, and avoid any such incidents from happening. Most of these were just mistakes or some lack of understanding, or we didn't know what was happening. Many of them were like that, or we missed in identifying some of the mechanisms that led to any of these incidents. So most of them relate to that. Either we didn't know, we didn't check, or we forgot checking it, or we may miss checking it. So most of the answers are there. But if you look at the numbers of it, what is the impact of us not maintaining assets purely from an energy industry perspective? Of course, we don't have a lot of studies happening from an industry-wide perspective. So one of the most comprehensive ones was the impact study that was done by then what was NACE in early 2000s up to 2011-12. If you look at, and they also had a country-wide studies, just the impact of asset degradation due to corrosion, due to other mechanical degradation of equipment or steels. The impact of just that on Indian energy industry was more than $3 billion, and this was about 10 or 12 years ago. The size of the industry is much bigger now. The age of the assets are much older, so this number may have increased multifold. Only if we really start analyzing it, we will start knowing about it. And when we look at the most recent report, the Marsh report, which they do publish every couple of years on the top 100 losses in the energy industry, mostly focused on oil and gas, this is how the trend looks like. Initially, it was industry did very well. We used to have a lot of accidents happening, but over the last couple of decades, we woke up, we instilled a lot of new practices in, and we understood a lot more about it, put in a lot of effort into it in reducing those incidents from happening. But if we see in the last couple of years, this study is about 2021. So if you look at that, we are again starting to see a significant increase in major incidents happening. Of course, there are a lot of minor incidents that happen, but if you start looking even at the major incidents, the last few years have been an uptrend that's happening, which is a bit discomforting, which is something that is really alarming in the sense. Moreover, one of the key reasons is also identified trying to look at the assets, or the age of the assets that we currently operate. we are not building a lot of new assets as we were doing maybe in the 80s and 90s. So virtually stopped building assets, large ones in the energy industry, in oil and gas and nuclear. Of course, a lot of new energy initiatives are coming up in wind, solar, hydrogen. But if we start looking even for them, there's a key learning that comes out from this study is that initially there are significant failures in assets because we have built them. Sometimes the designs may have been not perfect. We may run into operational issues. So there are some initial, in the first few years of operating assets, we do see a lot of incidents. That's what the less than 10-year graph shows. But as we go along, we learn from it, we improve our practices, we improve our management systems, and we are able to reduce the number of losses or incidents that happen. But once the plants start aging, we start going into beyond their original design life of 25 or 30 years or whatever it was designed for, then we start seeing a significant uptick in losses, in failures. And that's what this study shows. And we understand it. Most of our assets are getting older and older now. They're not getting anywhere younger. So the rejuvenation of it, refurbishment, repairs, all those will increase our costs of managing our integrity. So that's basically shows the numbers on it. We all know why we need to manage our assets. I'll not go into repeating them. But the key challenges are, I think we also heard it from Mr. Srivastav in the morning, Ms. Vatika Shukla, who basically alluded to the same facts in the aging assets, mostly in oil and gas. At the same time, we are expanding the operations beyond what the original designs were. That is, we are exceeding the integrity operating windows of our assets because we need to sweat them more, or we are seeing conditions which are, well, we need to operate with the assets and we can't continue to operate probably with the same conditions that they were designed for. We are stretching them, the new types of crudes coming in, more processing of those happening, both from making the fuels more cleaner or the type of or the source of these feedstock that we are getting in. For example, a lot of refineries now we are starting to use bio feedstock into our existing processing streams. What is the impact of the molecules that come in from biofeeds, which they were not originally designed for? So do we understand all that? So there are a lot of complex degradation mechanisms that come up, that we see them. And at the same time, data, the key thing, the key challenge, do we have the right data from the right time and the right amount? Of course, a lot of times that is one of the biggest sources of gaps that we have in the industry. We don't know the designs for particularly old plants. We don't even have drawings of them. We don't even have proper updated P&IDs, for example. So we don't know what we have. We don't know what we are operating with. Of course, we know basically a lot of it, but not all of it. So there's a huge gaps in the data. And the sensors and monitors that we install, are they enough to tell us what is happening within the system or within our processing facilities? So that all these add up to the challenges in managing our assets or integrity of those assets and ensure that we don't have failures. So the biggest risks, again, not knowing what we have, basically, do we know all the degradation modes that are happening? Do we know all about our assets? Do we know at each point of time what is the pressure, temperature, the chemistry of the fluids within the vessel or within the pipe? They may be changing. We may be adding a lot of chemicals. There may be a lot of upstream processing that may have happened, which I may not necessarily be aware at the location where we are looking at. So the key thing is, do we know everything about our systems? That is one of the key risks. We know the threat, but do we know how big the threat is? Can we quantify the threat? I know my corrosion can happen. I know fatigue can happen or a creep can happen. There are some models, but how reliable are these models? How reliable is our prediction? How reliable is our assessments? So how do we quantify these threats? In the morning we were also discussing on the CUI aspect. So we know that it exists, but can we quantify how big the threat is? That's one of the key challenges that we have in understanding our or quantifying our risk of assets. maintenance, we tend to avoid, a lot of times we tend to reduce our maintenance. We are not at the optimum levels. Sometimes we may go and do over maintenance in some sections where it's not needed and neglect some of those which are more key to it. We don't understand the complete risks of the system, so which may ultimately impact the integrity of the whole asset, or all it completely comes down or boils down to, are we doing an optimal management of our assets? Are we suboptimal? A lot of times it ends up that as the assets age, we tend to be more and more suboptimal in managing those assets. So it's about understanding all this and rebuilding or redoubling our efforts in managing our assets better and ensure that the integrity of these assets are managed. So that's what we will start discussing about. Basically, that just sets a bit of background on what the next, the more technical oriented sessions or the speakers will be presenting in the next an hour or so. So we have about 6 presentations in this session. I request each presenter that we have about 10 minutes to stick to the time. We will have 1 or 2 key short questions immediately after the presentation. Anything long or discussions, suggestions that the participants may have to make, we will take it